Now, if you want to have more ownership and control over your golf swing and your ball flight, you have to be very clued up on this, your left wrist angle in your golf swing, because this will completely change your ability to, one, how you move the club shaft and how you control your club face. And there isn't one right way to do it, because you need a different wrist angle depending on what your grip type is. So before we dive into what grip type suits which wrist angle, we need to understand what does this left wrist and its angle do to the club face and club shaft in the golf swing. So typically when we have more of a bowing movement of your left wrist, to where we have our left wrist move into more flexion in our golf swing, that will generally have a closing effect on the club face. So it will shut it down. You can also see how it has a shallowing effect also on the golf club. It pitches the shaft and the center of mass to where it goes a little bit behind us, that nice shallowing move. Let's say we have a flat left wrist. That more encourages that club face to stay stable in its position from what you're doing, and then it really promotes a more neutral shaft movement from there. And that's where if we have a cup in our left wrist start to form, so that extension, that generally has an opening effect on the club face and has a slight steepening effect on the club shaft in the downswing. So this makes a huge difference between club face and shaft angle. So let's talk about what grip types suit which wrist angle. So let's start at weak first. So where you've got, let's say, 1 to 1.5 knuckles on that left hand. So we're talking about left hand grip here. So for this, we know, okay, when we've got a slightly weaker left hand grip, that's going to cause the club face to open up more in the golf swing. So if we remember from back earlier on in this video, what closes the club face as a wrist angle? Left wrist flexion or bowing. So yes, if we had a weaker grip like a John Rahm, for example, we would need to do just like he does and start to bow that left wrist if we want to have any success in getting the club face square. It's going to have that closing effect, which will square up the club face, not close it off with a weak grip. And we need to make sure that is maintained for our golf swing. Now, the good thing here as well, it's going to be quite easy to shallow the golf club because of that flex and that bow in the left wrist. So weak grip, you want to make sure you bow the left wrist. So a neutral left hand grip. So when we look down, we're seeing 2 to 2.5 knuckles. Now, this club is very much, the club face is going to stay square through the golf swing with this grip if we don't do anything funny. So what we need to do from here, we need to have the wrist angle that more maintains what we've got. And that will be with a flatter left wrist angle. So that's going to keep that club face nice and square through the swing, and that's going to have a very neutral shaft movement. We would most likely have to add another shallowing method in to be able to shallow that club out, but we'll still have a pretty good swing if we can keep that left wrist flat with that neutral grip. We could even have a slight amount of flexion with that left wrist and have not too much of a closing effect on the club face, but we'd only have to have a little bit of left wrist flexion if we have a standard grip, but preferably dead flat with that left wrist for a neutral standard golf grip. So strong grip, where we're seeing 3 to 4 knuckles on that left hand. So we know by nature with this grip, the club face is generally going to shut down and close on us. So for us to have a square club face, we're going to need to make sure this left wrist is actually in a bit of cupping, a little bit of extension. So if we go back here with this cup in that left wrist with a strong grip, you can see it's kept very nice and square. So players on tour who would do this, let's say it's more of a Henrik Stenson, Matthew Fitzpatrick, for example, has this type of matchup. But like we know, it's going to be a little bit harder to be able to shallow the golf club with this grip type and this wrist angle, because extension of the left wrist, or cupping, another word for it, has a steepening effect on the club shaft. So we would have to have another type of shallowing movement, shallowing variable in the golf swing to be able to do it. A lot of players with this grip type, they would favor a lot of that trail elbow getting more in front of them in the downswing, what we would call trail shoulder external rotation, which will then help the club shaft shallow out a little bit. But if we have a stronger grip, we have to have the left wrist a little bit cupped to be able to make sure of it. We can't have it flat because that club face will get too closed. We certainly can't have it bowed unless our name's Dustin Johnson with that speed of rotation. Otherwise, we're going to hit the ball left. So of course, let's talk about some drills to do here. So this drill we're going to talk about is all to do with a tee and your glove. So let's go back to that weak grip. What have we got to do again for the weak grip? We've got to bow the left wrist to make sure that club face isn't getting too open, so it's nice and square. So we have our tee, we put the tee in the front side of the glove here, and what we need to do in our swing, we need to make sure that tee is separating from our forearm. So you can see here a little gap has been formed. If we can keep that gap, then we have maintained that nice grip wrist angle, so grip to wrist angle relationship for this grip type here. So it's going to train that nice bowing movement. So the drill for the flat left wrist is exactly the same thing to some extent. We still have the tee, we still put it in the front side of the glove, but now we're not necessarily creating that big of a gap at all. We want it to either lie flat on our forearm there, so you can see how that would create a nice flat left wrist. But like we said, we could have a tiny bit of flexion with a normal standard grip. So more than anything, if we say the standard way of doing it, let's just keep this tee nice and flat on that left forearm. Keep it there again through the entirety of the swing, and then we'll be putting in good reps to match up the grip and the wrist angle. So for the strong grip, we actually don't have the tee in the front side. We put the tee in the underside of the glove here because we want to train some left wrist extension for the stronger grip. So what we do, like we said, we put the tee in the underside of the glove, and then what we do from there, we create a gap between the tee and the underside of the forearm there, which is going to create some left wrist cupping. So absolutely the same concept as the bowing, but just on the opposite side. We create a little gap there. That's again going to create the good wrist angle to grip relationship there, and it's going to make it nice and matched up. So let's hit one here with this. So guys, there we go. This is absolutely vital information that every golfer needs to know to have more ownership over their golf swing and ball flight. So we have to have that correct wrist angle for our grip type. We can't be, for example, someone with a strong grip and trying to flex and bow the left wrist. We might see Dustin Johnson do that successfully, but I dare say you're not Dustin Johnson. So we can't all move like some of these top tour players with the little bit of anomalies that they might have. It's good things to learn from them, but some things also not to copy as well. We have to apply the right wrist angle with grip type. So if you enjoyed this video, click that like button. If you want more golf instruction just like this, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button too to be notified every time I put out a video. So match up your grip and your wrist angle and you'll be playing better golf.